Well, welcome to Modeling Time with me, Brian Banna. In this video series, I'm going to be working on some old freight cars. I call them the forgotten, mistreated, misfits freight cars that most people would pretty much consider junk, would pass them by at the train shows, and not even give them a second thought, and many times just throw them away. But I have come to find that this kind of modeling is very enjoyable for what I want to do. Now, I have nothing against the high-end cars. They're great. I mean, for $60, you can get a car that, you couldn't even build from parts and time for $60. So I have no problem with the high-end cars that are coming out today by the various manufacturers. It's just not what I want to do anymore. I really enjoy the AccuRail cars, the Atlas Trainman cars, the ready-to-run cars from years past, and the way that we used to run models. It's more nostalgic for me rather than trying to get the next latest and greatest cars. Now, I still buy some of those, like for instance, I'll buy the Tangent cabooses. They're beautiful cabooses. I don't want to spend all day building a caboose like that. Locomotives I like to spend a little bit more time with. But there's something about these freight cars that I'll show you in just a minute that really catch my imagination and as a challenge to turn them into something respectable. So let me get the camera set up and I'll go over what I'm going to be working on. All right, so I've got everything out that I'm going to be needing for this project. And so let me go over what this is. These are old AHM tank cars. They don't look like much now, but I can promise you, if you take the time to clean them up, repaint them and such, they look absolutely fantastic. I really love these cars. I also like the Tyco car that has the larger platform on it. That's another one that I'm going to do. I've done a couple in the past for Celanese, which I don't know if the car exists or not, but I found a picture that kind of looks like it, so I produced that car. I did two of them. And when I do that car, I'll show the same thing. But for this car, this is one of the old AHM cars. Now, the reason I got two here, because one of these this one has a cracked frame right here. This has a crack in it right there. And it also has a broken steer up here. I'm trying not to replace parts unless I really have to on them. Now I could put A-line stirrups on these if I wanted, but I don't really feel that is necessary. These are pretty sturdy stirrups and such. So I got this car, this Atlas car, in the green with the green globe, and I got one with the yellow globe. I think I picked this car up for like $4 because it had a broken. I bought these for parts, mainly for the wire that goes around and the ladders and the platform on top. And so I'm going to do it in yellow. So let me go over what's going to be done. But before I do that, let me show you a car that I have finished. And you can see the difference that it makes by taking the time to finish them. So let me move this. This one is the last one that I had finished. So that's what it looks like now. It looked like this before I stripped it and everything. It was a mobile tank car, so I took the liberty of adding frame information and stuff. But all of this, the artwork was taken off the car, just like I did for this car. I duplicated all the artwork off of that car to create this decal sheet. With the, I've got 4 different car numbers on it, and that will become, this car will become another fixed up Atlas chemical tank car. But this is what they look like when it's all done. So on this car, everything is stock up here, the platform and all that, the wire that goes around, the ladders. These placards, safety placards, are from I think it was Athearn. I bought a bunch of these. No. These are Detail Associates, the plastic ones. The trucks are Tahoe Model Works. But for this car that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to use the Kato A3 trucks. I think it'll be more appropriate for the car. the let me see, I got the trucks, the coupler boxes, the draft gear boxes are just these Katie draft gear boxes right up against the bottom of the frame, and they come out to be the perfect coupler height. Katie couplers. This brake staff, I'm sorry, not the brake staff, the brake wheel is from Tichy, and I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can zoom in here. If you can notice the ratchet that the staff goes into, that's a Tichy part also, and that comes from this tank car detail set. So you got the ratchet, which is right, I don't know if you can see it, it's right there. You get 3 of them in the package, 2 or 3, I can't remember. I think there's 3 of them in the package. And so you get 3 brake wheels also. And then the staff is just a piece of brass wire. And I measure the length of this staff on this car to get the length of the staff I need for that car. So, and then this brake wheel just is so big, it stands up so high, and you can notice how much lower this one is. On this car, looks better. So all the artwork here is all my own, and own design off of the AHM car that had the mobile. I really like this. I need to do a couple more of these. I have a whole bunch of these cars that I pick up at train shows for anywhere from $3 to $6. So I think this car cost me like $8 because they considered it a vintage car or whatever. I don't care. It was only $8. So the things that need to be done. So I'm sorry, we got the trucks, the Kato A3 trucks, we got the draft gearboxes from Katie, we got Katie couplers, we got the parts that we need from Tichy, I got the decals designed, and this part is the only part that I designed that I needed for these tank cars. Now what you see here, this, excuse me, this proboscis sticking out, that is actually the bolster pin. So the truck's going to go up over, I don't know if it'll fit on this one because these were, oh, there we go. The truck's going to go over the top of that, and then there you got the screw that goes down in there. This portion that I designed, and you'll see it when I do the assembly of this, this portion fits the saddle from the inside. So, and this hole, of course, lines up with the bolster pin, and then I will thread, it'll come in through this side. I'll thread this, and that way the bolster screw will have something to thread into. Because these trucks have the big, gigantic bolster pin on there. I think one of them has, yeah, these all have this huge bolster pin in there. So this would make up for all that. I have to take these pins off that are, because there's a whole, I have enough of these for I think 6 more cars. And if anybody's interested, I will be putting these on my Shapeways page in case you want to do a project like this. It really helps out a lot. So all I have to do is saw this bolster pin off and clean up the end, and the hole, I don't know if you can see it, but it goes all the way through, so everything lines up. So that'll be used, and you'll see how I use that when I get these cars apart. So that's what the project's going to be. It's going to look like this car, but not all beat up and everything. These everything's going to get repainted, and hopefully it'll come out as nice looking as this car. So that'll take care of explaining what's going on. In the next video section, I'll get started on taking the car apart, and we'll just get this project moving along. All right, so the first step in this rebuild process, of course, is to completely disassemble the car. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this tank off, because to get the platform and this dome off, we have to do it from the inside, because the platform is just clipped in. The dome, they melted in. So I need to get to the inside of the car. And I can't pull these side pieces, these railings off, because they're behind the ladder. And in order to get the ladder off, I have to get the platform off. And in order to get the platform off, I have to get the dome off. So let's take this tank off the frame. Now this is the frame I'm going to be using. It's sound, there's no cracks in it, nothing's broken on it. So that's the frame I'm going to be using. So these frames, you see this little pin right here? That's part of the tank, and it's press fit into the frame. So we need to get that off. And this car, another reason to rebuild these cars is when they assemble these cars, they don't really assemble them straight. This one's at an angle, so it's not pressed down all the way on this end. So that's another reason. But anyway, the real reason is to make these cars look really cool. So let me get this frame off. So I'll just take a screwdriver, pry it up. Oh, I got to take these trucks off first. I don't really care what I do with the trucks because they're not going to be reused. So I'm going to get in here, pull that truck off, pull that truck off. These trucks will just go into the trash. All right, so that's out. There we go. See, you can see they melt the dome into the car. You don't want to lose your turnbuckles, so you want to put those aside. When you get done, you want to pull them all off and put them aside. They're pretty beat up, but they're all made out of Delrin, so these will get refurbished. There's 3 and 4. There we go. So you don't want to lose those. Now I probably could 3D print some new ones, but when they're all done, you got to clean up the flash on them and stuff like that. They look just fine. As far as the weight goes, that'll stay in there. I need to get this thing off. There we go. So the weight will stay in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build a dam on this end and a dam on this end, and I'll put some BBs in there to make this car NMRA plus 10%, and I'll just use some Gorilla Glue. But I'll grit blast all of this first, clean it all up and such first. So there's the tank, or the bottom of the tank. We'll take this staff off of here. Sorry about that, just pulled it off. We don't really need this, but I'm going to keep it for the length of that staff. The brake wheel is going to go in the trash. And so this is basically the frame. There's a lot of flash on these edges, on these edges of the brake cylinders and such. So I'll get all that cleaned up. I'll clean up this little push pin, or this ejector pin, and do the stuff that I need to do for these draft gearboxes, because there's a cavity in here, so that needs to be filled with a piece of styrene and then trimmed down to size and such. I do have a longer draft gearbox that would go all the way back here, but I think the way that mobile tank car looked just fine with that Katie draft gearbox here. I need to cut this little simulated draft gearbox end off here. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can get that in focus. Come on. Where's the focus? Maybe I need to back it off a little bit. I don't know why it's not focusing. Let me get this. There we go. There's this little edge right there, a shelf that simulates the top of the draft gearbox. I'll take that off. But other than that, that's basically the way the frame is. So now, let's get all of this stuff off. So in order to get this dome off, which is the key, you just need to break the plastic, the melted plastic off. And it's no big deal, because once this car is all done, this will be CA'd back into it, because you'll never need to take this off again. All right, let me go get let me go get a Dremel real quick so I can use cut that out better. So I'll be right back. All right, so I'm going to use a Dremel with a ball end cutter on it, and I'm just going to go in there and carefully trim around the edges. All right, so the dome is now ready to come out. There we go. So there we have the dome. So you don't really need to know which side is front and back on the dome because the detail on both sides is the same. So what we want to do here is clean off the mold parting line here all the way down and all the way down the other side. And there's no flash on this thing, so that's good. So it's just cleaning up the parting line on that part. So we'll put that in the back there. And now we can take the platform off and we can take the ladder out. Now when you take the ladders off, don't go crazy flexing them because you want them to retain their shape. So we're just going to be careful with those, and we're just going to set those aside. And now we can, now these are kind of tough because this is like spring steel. So we're going to take these, is this the one I wanted to use? Yes, we'll use this one. We're going to take these, you have to bend them out, and they're really tough, so we got to take these handrails off. There's one. And there's one. Alright, these really aren't that good of handrails. I don't know what I'm going to need to, I mean they're good handrails, but they don't lock into their supports the way they're supposed to. As you see, they keep popping out. And what happens is when they bend this spring steel, it kind of puts tension on them to pull the handrails, to pull the handrail in and lock it into these things. But these aren't, what I might have to do is redo this bend a little bit tighter, so when it goes in, it pulls the handrail in tight and keeps a nice, like on the mobile cart, that handrail was done really, really nice. Oh, see, that one broke off, so that's why I have spares. And the reason why it broke off is because this stuff is really brittle, so you can't do a bunch of bending with it. So I've got spare ones, and actually on this Freon car, these handrails are pretty good, so I'll probably use the ones off of this car anyway. And you don't need to see me take it off that car. So everything's apart. And I'll leave these handrails on here. They just need to be, bent a little bit to be more square on the platform. But these are pretty good. This one kind of goes at an angle and pulls in a bit tighter, so I might have to do something about that. Like for instance, this one, if I wanted to, I could make new ones out of brass. But I don't want to have to do all of that. This needs to go back a little bit like that, but that's okay. We'll figure that out. So put that aside and brush all that onto the floor. And then we have the tank itself. Now with the tank, what I need to do is sand down this parting line here and here. I want to clean up this line here, but not destroy it. I want to keep this circular line, which represents the end going on, and then actually that should be cleaned up to the point where it blends in. So maybe I'll do that, but there's a lot of blending and it would change the shape of that. So, and maybe not. It does have a like extra, I don't know if this is a jacket on the bottom or not, but that's supposed to be there. I don't know if there you can see it along there. So that'll stay. And that's it. So this will just get all, grit blasted and cleaned up. And so I can put everything back on. This needs to be cleaned up and grit blasted and painted. The ladder needs to be grit blasted and repainted. Most of the work is going to be done right here. And for instance, let me cut one of these apart. Let me give you an idea of how these go in. Let me just trim the pins off of these. Now I still have to clean all the wax up off of these things. Now remember that I'm going to saw the bolster pin off, but these pretty much, oh, this one isn't for this one. This is for a different tank car. So what I can do, I think this one's for the Tyco tank car. I believe that's what that's for. But I'm still going to use it and see if I can't make it fit in there by cutting off these wings here and see if that'll fit. What I might do, and I think is what I did, is I just made a bolster pin out of styrene. So that's what I might do with that. These I'll probably show how they work with the Tyco tank cars. I'm pretty sure that's what those are for. So sorry about all of that little bit. But for these, I will just make a bolster pin out of styrene, and then it'll just screw into there like that. That's pretty much what I think I did on the other one. It's been so long since I did that mobile one that I can't remember what I did for these. So this will just get all cleaned up, and then there is a little ratchet detail on here, but it's not that good. And actually it doesn't really matter if it's that good or not, but I'm going to clean that off, and I'll put the titchy one in there. I'll clean up all of the mold parting lines and everything, clean up all the flash, and then I can go to work on the tank, and I can go to work on the bottom of the tank and get the weights in and all that kind of stuff. So let me get myself organized here, and we'll continue on. All right, for me, it's been a couple of days since I worked on this. For you, it's just another video clip. But let me go over what I've gotten done, as well as the changes that I've made for this, the design of some of the parts I'm going to do. So first of all, as you notice, this is basically how they start out. They're, the paint on them's pretty thick. So, and I went over in I believe the last video clip, disassembling all of the parts and or disassembling the tank car. So you get it basically like this, except I've already done some stuff to it and grip blasted everything to get it ready for paint. So starting from the bottom, on the frame, what I've done is, let me get out a pointer real quick. The bolster pads, I took 5/1000ths off the face of these, and that was mainly just to get, actually it was two things, not mainly. One is to flatten these bolsters. They had a little bit of a dome to them. I mean, very, very slightly, a slight dome to them. And second of all, is I needed to lower the frame on the trucks a little bit to get the coupler at the right height. The next thing I've done is I've cut these coupler pads down to, there was a little bit of a frame around here, maybe about 30/1000ths wide, and then there was this face. So I cut it right down to the face of the frame. And I don't have another one. I think I showed it to you in the other one. Now, and I did that for both sides. I've cleaned up all the flash around it. I've cleaned up all the mold parting lines, and then I cleaned up the stirrup steps and stuff. And then I cut a little bit of a cavity here, or not a cavity, but a shelf here, and I put the titchy brake ratchet on there. So at this point, what I have decided, since I have to build 3 more of these cars, and I'll probably buy a few more off of eBay or at the train shows and stuff, so I made a bolster pin that will slip right into this hole, and the pin or the portion that the truck goes around will sit right above the hole. So this hole diameter is slightly smaller than the bolster pin itself that goes into where the trucks are. Now what I've done in the past is, these are Kato trucks. I have one truck of each type that I've sacrificed so that I can measure this shoulder in here on the height of the shoulder, and I make it about 4 thousandths taller, so when I tighten the screw down it doesn't bind on the truck and there won't be a lot of wiggle room for the truck. So, and then I've drilled in the part that I've made, and you'll see all this once I get those in. It'll be about a week or so, maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks before I get the parts in. So I designed enough to do 10 cars. So there's a tree of 10 bolster or 20 bolster pins on it. So that'll glue in here, and it's only as the pin that goes through this hole is only as tall as the thickness of the from this portion on the inside to this on the outside. So it'll seat down, and the reason for that is because this portion on the saddle, or not the saddle, but the bottom of the tank, this face here sits pretty much right up against the face on the inside here. So once I put that bolster pin, and this will line up, I'll drill it all the way through here, and I'll use 256 screws, and that'll pull this bottom. See, this goes like that. So that'll sit in there like that. Wait a second, let me get it. There we go. So that'll sit in there like that, and I'll drill a hole from this side all the way through to this side, and that way my truck pin or my truck screw will, when it goes up against the bottom of the bolster pin, it'll also pull this tank down and it'll secure it nicely. Okay, so that takes care of that. Next, I also designed a new draft gearbox, because the Katy draft gearbox isn't as wide as this pad, it's slightly narrower. So I made a draft gearbox as wide as this pad and as deep as this pad goes in, because this pad goes in a little bit deeper than the Katy draft gearbox. But the face of it looks like a Katy draft gearbox, and the striker plate will be right up against the face of this tank car end on both ends. So that's what those are the two things that I've redesigned. So I've got enough for 10 cars for the bolsters and enough for 10 cars for the new draft gearbox. So that takes care of the frame. And then this is all it'll get grit blasted again once I get the draft gearboxes glued on and once I get the bolster pins put in and all that stuff, but just lightly. So that takes care of the frame. So the frame's all ready for the new parts to come in. Then moving up, not much to say about this. I grit blasted all the black paint off of it. I flattened these down good. And then the other thing is I built a dam on each end of the weight, because in here I'll add more weight to it to get it up to my NMRA plus 10%. So I'll be adding large BBs in here and then gluing them down with Gorilla Glue. So we'll get to that in a video clip coming up. Okay, so that takes care of that. So there's nothing else to talk about that. Next is the tank itself. Now, all I've done with this is I've grit blasted all the paint off of it, and then you can see on this one there's a mold parting line that runs right down the center of the tank here and continues over here. So on this one, I've cleaned that up, I've sanded it, and then I run my finger across the top to see if I have any flat spots. And there are no flat spots because I do my sanding. I take the sanding stick and I go around, or I'll take it and I'll, in a circular motion while I'm spinning or slowly turning the tank, I'll do that. So there are no flat spots up here. I've got all the paint out of the grab iron or railing clips and such. And then the last thing I do is I sand the bottom of this, because I believe it's this sand, because there's a lot of sanding dust still here. This end, there's a little step in where there's a little bit of extra plastic that sticks up, and then there's a little ridge that runs right along this edge here. And same for over here. So I sand that off, and you can kind of see, maybe not, a small amount of it right in here. So I gotta trim that off or sand it off. But I sand that all flat, and it fits very, very nicely. And the same, oh yeah, on this one also, I take a flat, like chisel blade X-Acto knife, and I just scrape along here to scrape any blemishes or any high points or anything like that off to get that to sit flat, and then that sits in there real nicely. Excuse me. When I talk so much, I get a dry throat there. Now, what I have to do is, after I put the weight on the inside, then I glue these two pieces together. And then I'll set into this joint, I'll set a piece of styrene rod. And I'll glue it in really, really good, let it, cure and nice and hard. Then I'll come back and I'll sand that all out so I can get rid of that joint. And then, although this portion will be black, I'll still be able to mask along here because the joint's right at the bottom of these saddle turnbuckle joints, or turnbuckle tie-down areas or whatever, here and here. So I just have to run a piece of tape along there. And the same for that side. Now, by doing this, it makes it very difficult because you have to, typically you would, like for instance, AHM puts these wire railings on before, although they don't even glue this together, but they put them on before they put the bottom on so they can go from the inside. Just a second, let me see, punch this out. There we go. They go from the inside, and they can, tighten down the wire with these holes because they'll be sticking out, and then they can just go in and tighten it down. Now, when I've got this all glued together, naturally, I'm not going to be able to do that. But on that mobile tank car that I showed you, what I do is I take a screwdriver blade, and I can get in there, and I hold the, I'll show you when I do it. I mean, you won't be able to see it, but I'll show you the process. But I hold the wire like that, and then I go in there with a screwdriver, flat blade screwdriver, and I just really hard, push on it, and it pretty much bends it over nice and tight. But there's enough room through this hole to do all of that. So that's that. Next up, excuse me. So I've got the dome. I've got it all the parting line all cleaned up all the way around. It's been grip blasted, and that piece is ready for paint. The platform, the wire that AHM had put in was all beat up. I'm sorry, it wasn't beat up, but it wasn't true. It wasn't at 90-degree angles to the to each bend. So I took it out, and that stuff is really hard, like spring steel or something like that. So trying to rebend that, you're just gonna snap it. So I just took some same size brass wire, which is 20 thousandths, and I just made new wire cages. I didn't have to bend them over on the bottom. The holes were big enough that I could fill them with CA and put CA in these corners, and it holds all together nicely. So the platform's all ready for paint. These handrails, they need to be grip blasted and then painted. And the only thing work I really have left, the ladders, they need to be grip blasted and painted as well. These just pop right back on. And the only thing I really need to do are these turnbuckles. I have more than I need here. I took them off the other cars, the spare cars. I need to clean up all the flash and mold parting lines off these turnbuckles, grit blast them, and then they're ready for paint. So I'm almost there, but I just need to, I'm almost there for paint. I'm really just waiting for the bolster pins to come in and the draft gearboxes to come in. Once those come in, I can show you what they look like. We can get them installed. I can move to putting, I'm going to glue the weights in here, and you'll see that shortly. And then this thing will be ready to be painted. And, I'm sorry, these two parts will be ready to be glued on once the extra weight cures in there. And then I can, fill and sand and stuff. And once the sanding's all done, then it's all just paint, decal, and finishing. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to get the car weighted so that I can glue these BBs in here. I use the clear Gorilla Glue to do that, but the the NMRA weight plus 10% is 3.85 ounces. So what I'm going to do, this only goes by 1/4 ounce, but that's okay. So I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to see what all this comes to. Let me go ounces. So I put everything on here. Right now this isn't a super accurate scale, but it's enough to get me what I need. So right now we're at 1/2 ounce. These are the trucks. That's 1 ounce. That's 2.5 ounces. And these aren't the draft gearboxes, but they're close enough to represent them, even though they're not going to weigh anything. Oh, there's 2 3/4 ounces. And that represents the bolster pin. So we're at 2.5. It's fluctuating between 2.5 and 2 3/4. So I need about another ounce to go in there. These are the BBs I use. So I'm just going to start dropping them in here. See if I can keep this thing. There we go. I don't know if that's going to stay up, but we'll see. So I'm going to just start dropping them in here until I get to 3 3/4 ounces. So that's actually quite a. This thing will fill up pretty good. There's 3 ounces. And what I figure the extra, 0.1 ounce will come from, actually probably be a little bit more. So actually what I'll do is I'll fill this up to 3.5 ounces, and then I'll let the Gorilla Glue make up the difference, because it has weight to it also. There's 3 1/4. Oop. It's falling over. All right, there's 3.5, so I'll add a little, because this isn't perfect, so I'll add a little bit, a few more. All right, so that's 3.5, and I figure the Gorilla Glue is probably not quite 1/4 ounce, so I'll add a few more of these. And I think that will do it. Okay, so I'll let the Gorilla, there's 3 3/4 ounces. So I'm going to take off about 5 of these balls, and then I'll let the Gorilla Glue make up the 3.85 ounces. So that's how I do my weighting. I put everything that the car will have on it. I don't have to worry about the turnbuckles. They won't even amount to even a fraction of a fraction. So not worried about that. But you see how I do it there. So I'm going to take off, let me see. Let's take off 5 of these things.
2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now it's fluctuating between 3.5 and 3 3/4, so I'm happy with that. So that's how I do the weight. What I'll do is I'll space these balls out properly so they're not, so they're evenly distributed, and then I'll put the Gorilla Glue in. All I do is I just squeeze it right over the top so that it covers all of the balls, and so that there's not any ball that's that will come loose. All right, so now I've got the balls distributed across there. Let me zero this. All right, so now I just have to make sure it's level. So when I put the Gorilla Glue on, it's not going to flow to one side more than the other. Okay, now I made these actually to 3.5 ounces because I think there's going to be quite a bit of glue on here that'll easily make it up. So I have actually a 1/4 ounce to go on here, and I think it'll easily do that. 1/4 ounce plus 0.1 ounce. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start. I'm going to see how much more weight this glue adds. As long as I don't get glue on the outside rail, I'm fine. So as long as it stays in this area. Oh, the whole thing turned off on me, so that didn't work out too well. But with all this glue so far, it hasn't registered, so I might have to add a few balls back in. Alright, everything's got glue around it. Let me add this on this upper part here. Oop, I didn't get any in here. I want to make sure this is completely covered. I don't want any of these balls working their way out and rattling around inside of this thing once it's all glued together. All right, so that's it. I'm pretty sure I need to add a few more, at least 5 more, those 5 more balls back in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me add just a few more. There we go. That'll take care of it. Okay, that should be at least NMRA and close to NMRA plus 10%. So I just got to let this cure overnight, and I can glue it together then. Well, the Gorilla Glue has cured, and all the weight in it is solid, so it's not going to come, loose once I glue the tank on. So at this point now, I can go ahead and glue this tank on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll have to put a piece of styrene rod along here after gluing it on, and it cures. Then I can put a piece of styrene rod in here and then blend all that so this is all one piece. Now I did reweigh everything, and it comes in right at 4 ounces, which is okay. I mean, I'd rather have it be between 3 3/4 ounces and 3.85 ounces. The 0.85 is NMRA plus 10%. So NMRA is, I think, 3.5, and then at 10% is brings it up to 3.85. But 3.85 to 4 ounces is only 0.15 ounces. This is this truck weighs 1/4 ounce, so it's just a tad over half the weight of a truck. So it's really not that much. So I'm not going to be concerned about it. It'll have good tracking weight to it for switching and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this together. I'm going to glue it with, this is good modelers friendly plastic. It's not Delrin or anything. So I'll glue it together with this Tamiya extra thin cement in the lime green bottle, which I believe has MEK in it. I'm not sure what's in it exactly, but it smells like MEK. So I'll go ahead and glue this together. I'll get the styrene rod in there, blend it, and then you'll see what it looks like. I have to step back for a second. It's been so long since I built one of these cars that I kind of forgot the sequence of what I do, or the process that I do. I don't put a styrene rod here. There's too much of a step in portions of this, like right down in here. Let me get my pointer out here. Right down in this area, there's too much of a step, especially over here on this side. There's too much. So what I do is, and right here. So what I do is I glue it together with liquid plastic cement, and I let that cure for just a little bit. And then I come back and I hold it really tight together and I back it up with thin CA all around. 2 coats. I do 1 coat, let it cure for a little bit, and then come back and put another coat. And that seals it up real nicely. Then I'll come back and I'll scrape the CA, so I just have the joint, and I'll use this Tamiya white putty. There we go. The Tamiya white putty, and I'll fill this area in and then come back and sand it down so there's a nice blend going. And you won't see the joint, and you won't see any changes in elevation along the joint. So it'll blend it in real nicely. The reason I want to do that, because this is a jacket from just under the handrail, or the handrails here, all the way around to just under the handrails on the other side. So this should be a solid jacket and without any joints or any noticeable changes in elevation on where these two parts come together. So I'm going to let this CA cure for about another hour or so, and then I'll come back and I'll load up the joint with some white putty and probably thin it a little bit with lacquer thinner, or the Tamiya lacquer thinner, and just spread it smoothly across here. Then I'll wet sand it, I'll sand it. I'll probably put another coat of putty and then come back and do the finish sanding. All right, I have the first pass of the putty down and sanded. You can see along the seam there and over here. This side has a little bit more discrepancies than you can see on this side. There's not a whole lot of putty that's left. I can still feel a little bit that I need to put in here. And on this side, it's in this area that I need to put it in and round it off better. I can feel a little bit of a flat right in there. So the first pass was just to fill in the deeper areas, and this was really offset bad, so I did a lot of scraping on the plastic to blend it to come around and blend in better with the bottom portion. This side was okay, it wasn't too bad. Still had to do some plastic scraping to get the blend going on. This side was pretty good. I still have some sanding to do. I can feel some ridges and such. So I'm going to put another very thin coat of the Tamiya putty on here, and a little bit more on this side. Let it dry and then get the second pass of sanding done. Now the true test to see how well the filling is doing, or if I've got it complete, is when I put a primer coat over it. That'll show up, like I can already tell it'll show up right here, and definitely in this area a little bit here. So I'll go ahead and get some more of this on there, but I'm not going to thin this at all. I'm just going to put it on straight as thin a coat as I can to get it covered. And I'll putty this up as much as I need to, you know, as many coats as I need to, till I get to what I want. After I put a primer coat on it, I'll probably also have to do some more puttying, let the primer dry, sand it out, and probably have to do a little bit more puttying. But I want it to be smooth. I don't want to feel any ridges or any change in elevations or anything like that. So I'll just keep at it. Well, at this point, the tank has been primed, or has primer on it. I've got the second coat of filler on it, and I've sanded it, and then I've put the primer on it, and I think it came out pretty good as far as hiding the seam. And the seam would be right underneath where you see these tabs. So I think it came out okay. So the next step is to paint, let me pull this off, is to paint this portion here where the seam would have, where it is, but you can't see it, is paint all of this black. Now normally you'd think, well, aren't you supposed to paint the light colors first and then the dark colors? Yes and no. It really doesn't matter, because what I'm going to do is I'll paint all this black. Then it's easier to mask a line underneath these tabs where the turnbuckles go in. Mask this and then mask that. Put another very light coat of primer gray on it. Then put flat white over it. And then put a gloss white over it. That's my plan for doing that. It works really well when you want to put a dark color on first, and then you want to put your light colors on. Typically you put your light colors on, mask those, and then you put your dark colors on. But on this one, because of the masking, the way it gets masked, it's much easier to stretch a piece of tape across these points to create a straight line than it is to paint the white on and then mask around these things and all that stuff. So black, mask, primer gray, and then flat white, and then gloss white. Now, what I will be doing is I won't be painting this whole thing black. I'll just be shooting along here and just get a little bit above that line there. So I'm going to let this gray cure for another day. I just put it on this morning, so I'm going to let it cure for another day. Then I'm going to put the black on, let that cure really good. I'm probably going to put a satin black, Tamiya, I think it's XB18 or something like that. So I'll put the satin black on it, let that sit for a while, and then we'll tape that off and do the white. I'm still waiting for the draft gearbox and the bolster pins to come in. That's why this won't get, the frame will not get painted black yet. But I can move ahead. I can paint this black, I can paint the dome black, I can paint the ladders black, and I can paint, I got to get these grit blasted, handrails, and I can get those painted black. So we'll do all of those in one thing, and I really should, I'll probably grit blast these turnbuckles, get them straightened up, get them cleaned up, grit blast them, and then get those painted black as well. All right, so it's been about a week and a half since I was able to work on this, because I was waiting for the bolster pins to come in and the draft gearboxes to come in. And I'm still waiting for one part, but I can get the frame done at least. So right now you can see I've got the bolster pin in and the draft gearbox. So I'll go over doing that on this end. There's really not all that much to it. So I've got a bolster pin here. Now I made this bolster pin, the diameter of the pin, slightly smaller than the diameter of this opening, but when it printed out, let me zoom in a minute, but when I printed it out, or when it printed out, it made the pin just a little bit larger than this, not by much. So I use a number 29 drill bit, which is just a hair over the diameter of the bolster pin, and I just drill out the bolster hole on the truck like so, and now the pin will drop through without a problem. And if you look at where this pin is, I put that over it, there's no play in it. Oops, sorry. There's no play in it, and it swivels very freely. So that works good. And what's nice is I've always had the hardest time getting the height of this shoulder to just be barely above the inside of the truck hole, so that when I put a screw in there, I can cinch the screw without binding the truck. And I finally got that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue that bolster pin in. So let me get some CA out here. And I'm going to, got to clear the tools off here so I don't push them into the CA. I've got a lot of projects going on right now. I'll show you them in just a second after we glue this on. So I'm going to put some CA right into the hole there. And that light's better. And I'm just going to drop this pin in there. And then come around here, and put just a little CA around the edge there, and that'll hold that bolster. Now I got to let that set up. But in the meantime, what I can do is I can go ahead and get the draft gearboxes. Looks like that one broke. That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. You see the draft gearbox edges. Let me cut this one off. And this is one of the reasons why they break if you don't use a saw to cut them, and they'll shatter. See this edge? Where's a pointer? I'll just use this. See this edge right here where these pins are that I have to cut off? Well, when I cut them off on this one, they shattered the top edge there. So I have to be really, really careful when I do that. So I made more than enough of these that I'll ever need. I made enough for 10 cars, so if I sacrifice one, I've got enough for 9 cars. And I can always print them out again if I want to. So on these, let me see if I can cut these without them shattering. Nope, that one shattered. Okay, so let me go back to using this one. The lid should cover that up. And you won't see it anyways once it's underneath all of that stuff. See the lid? Yeah, the lid will do okay on that. So you should really use a saw when cutting these tree pieces off, especially on things that have thin edges. And I'll just sand. This is the lid. I'll show you how it fits. I'm off a camera here. There we go. Now, I made a mistake on these. I made this lid about 20 thousandths too long, I think. Let me see. What's this? About 12 thousandths too long. So I need to cut off about 12 thousandths off the back, which is quite easy to do. There we go. Now when I fit this in there, the two holes should match. Yep, match. And this lip on the lid should match the lip on the, or the striker plate on the draft gearbox. So that won't be too bad. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use another one and see if I can't cut it without shattering it. Whoop! I just broke that one too because it has these edges on it. Oh, I totally broke that one. All right, I'll just use this one. So this one's going to go, basically this one's going to go right like that. And it'll be down like that, so you won't really see it. I'm going to be much more careful when I do these ones so I don't shatter the edges. It's just a really thin edge on there, so at least you got to see me make all kinds of, destroy 3 of them. So let me cut this one off. This one I think I can cut without shattering it. Yeah, and then I'll sand it. Okay. Then this one will get glued right onto there, so it'll like that. So let me get some. Oh, but before you do that, what you need to do is you need to drill. Let's see, there we go. You need to drill and tap for a 0.80. So I've got the pilot hole in there, so I drill out the appropriate size hole there. And then, there we go. That is not the right one. Then I got my 0.80 tap. And I just tap that hole. Now this draft gearbox is not tall enough to fully cover these little screws that I have, so I have to cut a little bit off the tip of the screw. Where did I put my cutters? Oh, there they are. These cutters are mangled on the teeth there, but they still cut. So I have to cut a little bit off the screw there, and that should still thread into there, but we'll try. Oh yeah, there it goes. Okay, so that'll still thread into there. Now what I need to do is I need to put some CA on there and get this lined up and pressed in place. There we go. Now there's some of the CA is going to ooze out over the side, which is okay. I'll just use it to fill the seam. Gosh, I keep getting off camera. Let me move this camera up a little bit. There we go. How's that? That's working. Okay, so I use this. Oh, nothing oozed out on that side, so I'll put a little bit over here to fill that gap. All right, so I'll let that set up while I do the next step, which is we need to drill the bolster pin for a 256 thread. So this is a 256 tap. Let me put my 0.80s away because I don't need them anymore. Okay, I got the 0.80s put away, and where did I put my... Oh, there's a 0.80 tap. Now I need to find my... I got so much stuff in the way here. Where'd you guys put my 256 taps? Huh? I had them right here because I just used them. They're probably sitting right in front of me somewhere. Or did I put them away? No, they're not there. Okay, this is what happens to me quite often. So there's the tap. I need the drill bit. Did I put it in here? There's the container for them. Oh, there they are. I put them all together. Okay, so there's my 256 stuff. This is my 0.80. That's why you can't have everything all mixed together. All right, so I get my 256 drill bit, and we're just going to drill right through there. There we go. That's drilled out. I can put those away. Oh, actually, no. Oh, yeah, I can, because I accidentally already drilled it. So on the tank portion, you can see I already got the black painted on there. On the tank portion, you also have to drill out this bolster hole here on each end of the tank. So this one's already drilled out. So what we want to do now is tap all of that. So let me get my 256 tap out. There we go. I'm not going to use that one, and I'm not going to use that one, so I'm going to put those away. All right, so when you tap this hole, you want to tap that hole at the same time. What's nice about these tank cars is these ends are clocked. So this pin right here, I don't know if you can see it in the black, but this pin goes through this hole, and this hole is not centered. So you just need to find, there we go, which side it goes to. There we go. Now you want to squeeze these two together, and what I'm going to do is put this here so I can press down on it. You want to keep this all pressed together, and you want to let the tap just find its straight path. Now on this one, now typically you can power through plastic with a tap, but I don't want to crack anything, so I'm just going to go a little bit and then back it out and clean it off. And go again, just let it find its path. Alright, so I'm through the 3D printed part. Now I have to go through the plastic. And right there we're contacting the plastic, and we are through the plastic. And just carefully back this all the way out. There we go. That's all done. Put the tap away so I don't mix it up with the other stuff. And now I can take this apart. And I've got this tapped, as well as the bolster hole tapped. Get all the crud out of there. So I can put this aside, and now we'll see how well the truck fits. Truck fits nicely. Let's put a screw in there. Actually, before we do that, let's, how did that get there? Okay, there we go. There's the spring that came off my other coupler. So I put a new spring on that one. Oh, not that one. This one here. Okay, so let's put this together. Remember, I cut the back off here, so let's sand it a little bit. And now, hole lines up. Let's get the little screw going. Okay. When I can't hold the screw, I use it with tweezers like that. Just hold it over the hole. And then just guide it and thread. There we go. All right, that's cinched. Coupler works very nicely. So now I've got the couplers on both ends. And even though that's cracked, it's okay. If I could have found the pieces, I could have glued them back on and it would have been just fine, but not going to worry about it. So now comes the moment of truth. Do we have the coupler heights proper? And I can tell you right now I do, because I already checked. So now I can put this in there. I can cinch it and it still swivels very nicely and rocks just barely. So let's put that one on there. Let's get that cinched. All right, so we now have a frame put together. All right, so let me get my coupler gauge and a piece of track. All right, so my coupler gauge is here. Now I tested it against that mobile car that I showed earlier. The mobile car coupler slightly drooped so it didn't line up, but I did test this one. Okay, so that's all flat on the track. And we come up here and we are near perfect. It sticks up, the coupler on the tank car frame sticks up about maybe somewhere between, I'd say about 10 thousandths on that end. And on this end over here, let's make sure this gauge is flat on the track. Nope, not there. There we go. This one is dead nuts on. So I'm very happy with the coupler height. The coupler height looks really good. Now I can grit blast this frame with the draft gearboxes in place, and then I can get it all painted. I can put the where do I have that somewhere? Oh, there it is. I have the brake wheel and staff, so that's going to go in here. Of course, I've got to put it at the right height and everything. So that will go. This is a Tichy brake wheel, and then it's just a piece of phosphor bronze wire. So the brake wheel will come up, and then I can get this all grit blasted and painted black. The only thing I'm waiting for are the turnbuckles that go into these holes here. The ones that came with the kit, I tried to clean them up. They were just nasty looking. And the ones I did on the mobile tank car, they looked okay. I was able to clean them up, but these ones and any of the extras that I had, they just didn't look good. So I designed them up and had them 3D printed. They are currently in shipping on their way to me now, so this car should get done pretty quickly. So once I get this frame painted, now the trucks, I already had a set that was painted and the wheels weathered, so I don't have to paint those and stuff. So the trucks are all done on this car. Next up for this frame, if I can get all the dust off of it, is to mask along here on the bottom of these tabs and around the ends, and then get a primer coat put on it, and then I can paint it white. So this will go on something like, oh yeah, I can't put it all the way down because the screws are sticking up. They need to thread slightly into there. So anyway, that's what's next up on this, is to get this everything grit blasted and then painted. I mean, the frame's already grit blasted, but I just spit on my frame. I got to get the brake wheel glued on, get everything grit blasted again, and of course take the couplers out, and then paint it. And I'll paint it a gloss black like I painted this. Now remember before I said I was going to paint a satin, but I decided to go with gloss. It just Just has such a nice finish on it. But at the end, this will get a satin varnish, so no big deal. So I'll go get this all taken care of, get it painted, and we'll start masking the tank. All right, there's one thing I forgot to mention that needs to be added also, and that is the safety placard diamonds. So you got one on each end, and you got one on right side, one on left side, or vice versa. So you got to add those. Now these are the Tichy from this detail set here. And they are the wooden boards, like the steam era boards, but I'm not so concerned about, you know, what the boards look like. I needed the shape and the placard, because once it's all painted, you don't really see it. On this tank car, I use the Athern plates, and they have those little crossbars on them, which is nice, but again, you don't really see it. I would much rather have the Athern plates, but trying to get those and finding them is almost impossible. Not impossible, but it takes some work to find them. You know, you're paying for them on eBay and all that stuff. And since I'm getting the Tichy kits anyway, they come in the Tichy kits, and I get the ratchet that I want for the brake wheels. So I just went ahead and used them. They look great. I like them, and they will serve their purpose. And now I mentioned that I would show you some of the things that I'm working on real quick, and I forgot to do that. One of them, from some of you that watch all my videos, it's the F units, but I broke out and got another set of F units out. Let me zoom out so you can see. Here's another set of ABA F units. I'm doing that. I've got this C-liner that I'm working on, and I've got some coil steel cradles I'm working on for my gondolas. I did the, let's see, where did I put that? I don't know where I put it. So I did all the wood staining today for the, oh, here they are. So I've got all the cradle wood slats all stained, you know, various colors and stuff like that. The cradles, I've got them painted so they're glossy right now, but they won't be glossy when they're done. So this is what a cradle looks like. And then the wood slats will go in here, and then you got the two coil steels that'll sit in like that. So I've got a bunch of those that I need to get done for some gondolas I'm working on. And it might seem like a lot on my plate, but I'm actually getting a lot done. It's the C-liner I need to get some parts designed for. The F units right here in front of me, you can't see them, but I'm getting the trucks done. Once I get those trucks done and get them up to speed of the the ABA set that I've completed up to where I can start working on the shell, then I'll start videoing again and doing the two ABA sets. On the tank car, I'm just going to move right along with it, as you're seeing. And the turnbuckles will be in soon. Once those comes in, everything's going to go together fine. This will get painted very quickly here. And like I said, I got the trucks done, couplers that just pop in and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get this painted and move right along with it. It's time to mask the tank. See, I already got one side masked. So I'm going to show you how I do this side, how I do my masking. So first thing I do, I use Tamiya tape most of the time. If I need really, really sharp, well not sharp, but tight masking, I typically will use small pieces of chrome foil. But to mask, what I do is I'll take a piece of tape, measure about a little bit how long it is, stick it down on my work surface, and I will, you don't have to do this part here, but I just cut the ends. They don't need to be perfectly straight. And then I cut one edge to be sharp and straight, because the edge of the tape that you get out of the package can be frayed a little bit, and it doesn't look like it, but once you lay paint down, you're going to see a little bit of an edge, an undulating edge, not a sharp edge. So next thing I want to do, I want to lay it right underneath this lug and underneath this lug here. Let me get this camera, there we go. Okay, so get the light here. What I want to do is tape will curl. The first thing I want to do is just lay it underneath that lug, and then hold it in place, lift it till you hit the edge of the lug, and then stretch it across and lay it underneath that lug. So right now, I don't know if that line is straight. It looks straight, but I don't know. But what I want to do first is to make sure that this line and this line are straight. And so what I do is I take a straight edge, put it underneath those lugs, and this edge needs to come up just a little bit. Alright, oh, that's looking really straight. Oh, just a second, let me check this edge. That's actually really straight. Yeah. Now there's a little bit of a rise right here. So what I'm going to do, and this is what I wanted to show you. Oh, before I do that, now I want to take a burnishing toothpick, and I want to burnish it right around the lip of this jacket. There. And there. Now I can press all that in. Now maybe you're thinking, well, if that's not straight there, why are you pressing this in? I'll show you in just a second. So I'm going to burnish this all down. And now I'm going to lay my straight edge along there. And I'm going to set it up against these two pieces of tape I have here so it doesn't, the tank car doesn't want to move. And let me look at that edge. Everything looks good. Alright, so now you're not going to be able to see this, but what I'm going to do, I've got this scalpel knife. This is a brand new blade. It's really, really sharp, so you got to be very, very careful. So I'm going to hold this up tight against here, and I'm going to take this blade and just barely press it. And make sure nothing moves. All right. Now, this should all be straight here. The only place I need to go in and cut is right underneath this tab because I didn't get the blade. There we go. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to grab this little piece. There. And grab this piece. Right like that. Now, I've definitely got a straight line across there. And when I put this on here, everything lines up really, really nice. So I have a beautiful, and you look down it, it's all straight, and it's really, really nice. And that's what I did for this side also. So now, take the same knife, and I'm going to cut these ends. All right. All right. That end's done. Now I just got to cut this end. Make sure it's nice and stuck down there. There we go. Now when you do something like that, you don't want to put the point in and cut because you're liable to veer one way or another. You want to kind of go long along the seam so that you can follow it easier with the knife. I got a little bit of piece that needs to be cut right. There we go. All right, so it's basically masked. I just have to mask over this middle portion here. Let me get my scissors on here. These Tamiya decal scissors are just amazing. I love them. I've got 2 sets. I'm probably going to get another one just to have as a spare. So right now, I'm just going to stick a piece of tape right up on the edge there. Just cover that seam. Alright. The same thing for the other side. I only need to clip one side because I don't want the ragged edge to stick over the edge of this tape. I'll just do that. Okay. Now I don't have to cut the edges. I can just put a piece there, come over to there. Need a tiny piece right there. Need a tiny piece right there. And then I want to take a large piece and go here to there. All right, so that's all ready to have primer put back over it. So the edges are all burnished down. and it's ready to get rid of that black, just to put a little bit of primer over it so that I can paint it white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same color here, which was a Tamiya gray color. It wasn't actually called a primer, but Tamiya gray color. I'll put a light coat over the black. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to put a flat white over it. That helps it so that you don't have to lay down as much gloss white, because gloss white won't cover as opaque in one pass as a flat white. Well, here we go with the flat primer, or the Tamiya gray. So I've got that over the entire model to unify the color. I'm going to let this dry for about an hour, and then I'm going to put the flat white over it. And now I have it with the flat white applied to it. So I am going to let this dry for about an hour, and then I'm going to put the gloss white over it. And then I'll let that dry for about a day. And from there, once that's dry, then I can put my clear coat over everything and start decaling. Well, the white is on, the gloss white. So now we come to the big reveal. First I gotta look and see how the coverage, the coverage is good. It's sometimes when you put white on, the shadows that it casts on the joints and stuff make it look like you didn't get paint in there. But it looks painted all the way around just fine. Yep. Okay, so now we go to the big reveal and we take the masking off to see if everything went good. So this could either be a horror story, or it could be like, ooh, I like how that looks. So let's see which way it goes. Okay, now we go to the ones that will tell us how it looks. So far, so good. Nice sharp line. Oh yeah, I like that. Do this side. I'm not going to say anything till it's done. Oh, I like that. Everything came out real nice. All right. So, here we go. Everything came out the way that I wanted it to. Now what I need to do is put a gloss clear coat over this to protect the paint, keep it from chipping or scratching or anything like that. And my favorite for that is All Clad Aqua Gloss. So I'm going to go ahead and put a gloss coat over that, and just a second. And while I'm doing that, I'll put a gloss coat over the frame. You see the frame's all painted gloss black. So I'll go put a clear coat over this as well, and that will get this. Let's see how this looks all together here. There we go. Ooh, that looks good. So that'll get this all, protected and such, and then let that sit for at least a few hours, and I can get to the decal work on it. So far, I'm really happy with the paint work. Actually, after I put the gloss coat on it, then what I'm going to do is I'll assemble it, and then I will put the decals on it. Because I'd rather do all the assembly work before the decals are on, so that I don't screw up the decals in any way. And that way, with all the grab irons and everything on, everything can be placed in the appropriate place in the appropriate areas. So far it's looking good. Real quick, little point here. After taking the tape off, there's a little bit of an edge on that paint from where the masking was. So I knocked that down real carefully. Just take the sharp X-Acto blade and just come along and just let the blade weight do the work and take off that edge. So now I've got no edge on here. Whoop, there's a little bit right there. There we go. And then on this side, I got an edge. So just come along here. Just let the knife blade, the weight of the knife blade, take that edge down. Nice, okay. And then let's come right here. And back here. All right. So now I've knocked that edge down. It's really smooth along there. So when I go and put the clear coat on it, it won't have a buildup along there. So, oh, I see a little bit more. Right there. There we go. All right. So I'll go ahead and put a clear coat on this, and then we'll get to assembling it and get started on the decals. Okay, back working on the tank, although you just saw the last clip, so me saying back working on the tank, you're like, of course he's working on the tank. We just saw the last clip. I haven't worked on this tank car in almost 2 weeks. So I'm back working on it because the final part came in. So let me just give a quick recap. The tank is all done, the frame is all done, both are painted, ready for decals. The platform's done, painted, ready for assembly. Ladders are done, painted, ready for assembly. Dome, ready, painted, ready for assembly. Trucks are done, waiting to be installed. Couplers, of course, need to be installed. I showed you the draft gearboxes, that's all in place and ready. The truck pins are installed. Everything's painted and ready to go. I've got the handrail grab on the car. That's all done. I went inside and I bent them over so they're nice and tight, and it looks really, really good around the car. So that's all set to go. So I did finally get the turnbuckles in, and here they are. I'll show you, give you a closer look. Let me just move this out of the way. All right, so these are the stock turnbuckles. And these are the ones I made. Now, let me zoom in here. Let me get these in the middle. It's going to get blurry here for a second. Let me see if I can get it in focus. There we go. All right, so these are the stock turnbuckles, and these are the ones I had made. Whoop, let me move this closer. There we go. Okay, now the stock ones, I typically use the stock ones, but they're lately the ones that I've been buying, they've come out quite flashy. I mean, not flashy like, ooh, they look beautiful, but flashy as in lots of mold parting line, filled in where the screw rod goes into the turnbuckle and such. And it's really hard to get all that flash off of these things. I was like, this is just ridiculous. I'm tired of cleaning these things up. So I made my own and had them 3D printed. Now you'll notice that, of course, the turnbuckle itself is a little bit wider, not by much, but a little bit wider than the, that one I can't hold, a little bit wider than the stock one. But the reason for that is because of design tolerances. You have to be a certain, if you've got a piece on the inside of this turnbuckle, you have to be a certain distance away for it to print out. So that's why these are the way they are. Now on the stock ones, they're squared off at the ends. What I did is I just kind of rounded them on mine. So these ones are printed in brass, and these ones are printed in fine, smooth detail, the finest one. They actually both turned out really nice. Now when this one came to me, it came in a nice jeweler's bag. and stuff, but and it was all really shiny and stuff. But I've grit blasted it since, because the rods, what would be the threaded rods, it had this really weird scallop look to them, but it's gone after I grit blasted. I think it was just the way that the shine was on them and stuff. So I'm probably going to use the brass ones. I have enough here, I think, for 10 models, and I have enough here for 10 models. Now, these are sturdy enough to use. I thought maybe they'd be too brittle and stuff, but once cut off, I think they'll work just fine. So those, and I think these are going to look just fine. Those are going to go right in there like that, and such. So I got to just basically cut these off, cut 4 of these off, and get them painted. So I'm going to do that once I'm done with this video. But I like the way they turned out. I've got more than enough turnbuckles now to get a bunch of cars done and such. So that's what I was waiting for. Now I can finish this tank car. And I showed you the decals before, but I'll just show them again. I think this car is going to look really cool. I think it's going to be loads and loads of fun when it's done, to see how it looks. I love these AHM tank cars. I keep buying them, and because I know I'll do other things with them. What I kind of do is I look for paint schemes and stuff that are on them that I really like, and then I'll just reproduce the artwork. Like this one, I got this one from Canada. Now this one is the precursor car to this car. And the reason I said everything's the same shape, it's got molded on handrail here. The size of the tank's the same. This dome, if you look underneath the platform, it doesn't go all the way through and stuff. But this is the precursor to that model, or the AHM model there. I don't know what this one is. I think this one's AHM also. It says made in Slovenia. Not sure, but it's basically the same. But I bought this car. I think I got it for like $6 or $5 or something. But I got this car because I really like the artwork on it. So I'm going to reproduce all this artwork and do another tank car like the Atlas chemical tank car that I'm working on. But that'll be for later. I'll probably do like two or three of these. I really like these. And I've got enough decals to do 4 of these cards if I wanted to. Whenever I do my artwork, I always make enough for, typically what would fit on a quarter sheet. That's what's considered a quarter sheet and stuff. So right now, I'm going to go cut 4 of these off. I'll just use a razor saw and cut 4 of these off and get them painted black. Once that's all painted, I can go ahead and get them glued in, get the tank permanently installed, and get the tank permanently installed, get the platform on, get the ladders on, the dome on, and then start decaling. Well, here we go. Everything's assembled, and the model's all ready for decals. So I will get to that in the next video clip, but I just wanted to show you everything's together. I got the ladders on, I got the platform on, I've got the dome glued in place. Everything is all where it's supposed to be. I've got the turnbuckles in each corner on the saddles. It's kind of hard to see with all the black. Let me get the light out in front maybe. But there's that, and then of course I've got them on the other side as well. So now, like I said, it's time to get this thing with decals on it and the final finish. So I'm at the decal stage. I've got the decals cut out, so this is one side, and this is the other side, and an end over here. Now, I couldn't really show cutting the decals out because I had to keep them up close to me and cutting. But some of the things I want to talk about with the decals. So first off, these are made by Precision Design Company. The whole decal sheet is one sheet of film. Let me get this camera up a little bit more. There we go. How's that? Because I'm always off the screen. And then they're run through a printer, I guess, and then the artwork is printed on the decal. I got some black paint on my fingers here. So So what I want to talk about, he says on the instructions, do not float the decals. Now, what I believe he means by that is do not float them in any solvent or decal setting solutions or even a diluted solution. In the beginning, I used to do that, and I understand why. These decals or the film is extremely thin, and even just a little bit of dilution of decal setting solution causes them to want to stick, and they're really hard to get into place. I do float them with just water. I use distilled water when I do my decals so that there's no particles floating in it or calciums or anything like that. So I use distilled water. So the key to using these kind of decals is you need to cut them as close as possible to the artwork. And let me show you what I mean by that. And actually I need to cut some more on that one. So like for instance this one, this is an end decal. And you can see I've cut as close as possible to the artwork, but do not accidentally cut into the artwork. Because as soon as you disrupt that edge of the artwork, the printing is going to start chipping away. Like it is now, where there's just a micro edge around it, the printing is very solid. But as soon as you break that edge, the ink starts chipping away. Now I said I need to cut this one, and the reason I need to cut it here, and because that goes around this, I think it's, let me see, that goes around this lug right here. So I need to go ahead and do that. I'll do that off camera. It's simple. So this is what we have to start with, and this is my guide for where I need to put everything. Now, I always cut my decals with scissors. These are Tamiya decal scissors. I have like 3 pair of these. These are just phenomenal scissors. I also have the Hasegawa ones. That's these ones. And these ones are really good too, because they got nice big areas for your hands to go into. These ones after a while start hurting my fingers. Actually, they start hurting right in here because I press into them. But I like these more. I feel like I can get more of a precision cut with these than I can with the Hasegawa ones. But I do like these scissors a lot as well. Now, let's see. I would highly suggest you getting yourself a set of Tamiya decal tweezers. They have a really nice flat end on them, and they pick up decals very, very nicely. The other things I use, this, what I call my decal brush, you can see I carved a D in it. That was done like almost 25 years ago. So I've had this brush for decaling for that long, and I just keep it, in a nice shape, and it'll stay with you for a long time. So that's about 25 years old. And this toothpick is about the same age, about 25 years old. I blunted one end or chiseled one end and sharpened the other end. So this is just to push the decal around when I need to push it into place. My preferred decal solvent is Solvaset. I always go with the nuclear option with Solvaset, so I have a bunch of that. I made this, here, let me show you. I made this little box out of balsa wood just to hold everything and stuff. So I got 3 bottles of Solvaset. I keep a few, right now I just have 1 Q-tip, but I keep a Q-tip in there. I got an area for a knife and some blades, and of course where I hold my tools, see, like that. Yeah, so basically that's my, and then I got this old cup or little little dish for water and stuff. So that's my whole decal area and stuff. So let me go ahead and get this cut so that I can get started, and then I'll do a few decals so you can see how I work on that. I'm sorry I couldn't show you cutting the decals out, but again, it's like I'm right up close here. You would never see what I'm doing when I was cutting those out. But a while ago, somebody asked if I could show how I do my decaling. There's not a lot to it, but why not? It's part of the hobby, and there's some people that don't understand it. Most people do, and there's some that would like to understand maybe little tips and tricks and stuff, although there's not a whole lot to it. But I will explain. Oh, one quick thing. These decals do not react with Solvaset the same way that microscale decals do. Microscale decals, of course, have the, actually this is one big decal film sheet also, but most microscale decals have a zero edge film, so it's not one sheet, but there's a clear film put down before the artwork's put down over it, and then the Solvaset kind of melts the decal a little bit and causes it to conform over raised surfaces and rivets and fall into crevices and things like that. This type of decal film, you have to work it into the crevices and around surfaces. And most of the time, if you have raised surfaces, it will, how do I want to say, it will crack the artwork ink. That doesn't happen all the time, but they say to apply Solvaset and just let it do its job. Well, with this type of decal film and artwork and stuff, I work it all the time, because if it's a raised surface, like one of the next projects I have to do is a rib side boxcar, but the ribs aren't raised all that much. This is the artwork for it. So this large logo here has to go over those ribs. So I'm going to have to really work that Solvaset in there to get this to soften, because these don't soften really easy like microscale decals do, and they lay down. These type of decals work fantastic on flat areas or smooth areas like the tank car or box cars that don't have raised surfaces. But for raised ribs, I will do one and see how it works out, and then I'll probably do a little really short video on how I got these to work. But you really have to work them in. So let me go ahead and get these cut, and then I'll start applying some decals. Okay, so I've got the notch cut out, and a little tip on that. One of the things I don't do is I don't use a knife to cut my decals. It tends to rip the decal and shred the edge a little bit. It doesn't give as good a cut. Even if it's a brand new knife, it'll cut in the beginning nicely, but typically you'll break the tip, the little tip off, and then it just doesn't cut as well. I always use scissors, always use scissors. Now, a little tip here, let me see if we zoom in. Like when I have to cut this notch out, what I do is I'll make the vertical cuts on each side, and then because these corners are really tight, what I'll do is I'll slip the scissor right up underneath where I've cut, and then I'll angle the scissor and make the cut so that I don't bend any of the decal itself. I don't deform any of the artwork or anything like that. And that's what I do a lot for if I have to cut circles and stuff like that. I'll angle the scissor and then just move it around the cut. Now for these around like this atlas here, I just made tangent cuts all the way around. I didn't make a curved cut. Whoops, I'm sorry. I just made tangent cuts all the way around. I didn't take one big curved cut, and it's much easier to make the tangent cuts than it is to try to cut a circle. So that's how I do that. Okay, so the first decal I usually do, let me get my everything open and out. Oh, just a second, let me get everything set up and then we'll get started. Okay, so I've got my distilled water here. Now some people use warm water, whatever. This is just room temperature water in a cup, but I always use distilled water. It doesn't have any of the sediments and things like that in it that can leave watermarks on your models and such. But I'll go over some of that later too. I've got my Salva set up here. I got my tweezers, I got my paintbrush, get it ready, and I got my toothpick. So the first decal I'm going to do is this Atlas Chemical Industries. So the decal film for the Precision Design Company, this stuff releases in water almost instantly. It's not like microscale where you have to let it soak for a while. These ones, I'll put it in the water, make sure it's fully covered, and that is about as long as I need to put it in there. I mean, you can leave it in there longer, but let me see if it starts breaking away. See if it proves me wrong. No. Okay, that one proved me wrong. The smaller ones will break away really fast. But again, these don't need to be soaked as long as microscale decals do. Now, like I said, I don't float them with any solutions. I used to use the microscale stuff, and I would mix it 50-50 with water, and like I said earlier, it's the decal would start sticking almost instantly. So I don't do that anymore. I just float it in water. So I'm going to push the decal off a little bit so I can grab the edge of the sheet. I'm just going to put it on here. It's not where it's supposed to be. Let me grab some more water here. Get it on the decal. Move it to where it's supposed to be. Now, according to this, my reference, the bottom of the T is just above that lug. So let me get some more water on here. And get my toothpick out here and just start working this decal down. Now's the time that I sit here and just push and prod till everything is where I want. So I can't put this Chemical Industries under the wire because then you wouldn't be able to see it. So it's going to sit right above the wire there. Right about like that. Alright. Now it's time to just make sure it's parallel with the bottom of the tank car. So usually, one other tool that I use a scale ruler, and I will start measuring. On this one, I don't have any points to measure from, but I can see that the decal needs to come up a little bit there. I have a point I can measure from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from the top of this lug to the top of the S, and from the top of this lug to the top of the T, to see if it's the same, because those are constant points. So we've got 200, about 230 thousandths. 230, yep, that's it, that's even. So I'm good there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Q-tip. I'm going to wet the end down because if it's not already wet, the water won't soak into it. And then I'll dry it out. And now I'm going to wick all the water off of this decal. And to do that, you don't brush it because you're liable to move the decal. You roll it. And just roll it in. Don't roll it all the way. You don't have to roll it all the way across, but you want to squeegee all this water out. And once you get all the water out, then you can go through and you can like push the water out. You don't have to roll it anymore. And make sure all of the water is out. See, when I do this, I see little bits of water coming out. There. So now all the water is out of that decal. Now this, the bottom where it says chemical industries, it doesn't look straight across this wire. That's because there's a little bit of bends in this wire. So you can't use this wire as a guide. You've got to use something that's constant. And like I said, that's why I measured from the top of these lugs. And they should still be the same. 230. 230. So they're the same. Now it's time to apply Solvaset. So now I just squiggle my brush into the Solvaset. And I just brush it on. Oop, what's that? Something there. Oh, it's a little, I don't know how to call it, a little something in the paint. So the decal is forming over it, so that's okay. So I'm just going to put Solvaset all over this. Just going to brush it on. Now remember, they always say just brush on the Solvaset and just let it do its job. But as I mentioned, on these decals, it doesn't do the same thing as it does on microscale decals. So I just keep going around with it till I know that it's fully covered, fully saturated. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry off my brush. I'm not going to clean it off in water. I'm just going to dry off the brush. And I'm going to go back over it and get all these puddles off. And the reason why I get all these puddles off, and you see how I wicked it onto my fingers? Now, if you do that and you've got Solvaset on your fingers, do not touch the paint because it will leave a fingerprint. It'll melt into the paint ever so slightly. So just make sure it's dry and then you can touch again. But the reason why I wick off all the Solvaset is because if there's any puddles on there, it will leave a watermark. There we go. So there's the one decal put on. Now let's go and put, let me see, it'd be this one here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this decal on. So that one actually straddles the line, this handrail line. So that one straddles that. So I got to let it soak in there for a second. So what I do typically is I'll do a full side, then I'll do both ends, and then I'll do the other side. So I'll show putting this decal in place. After that, all the decals are the same as far as placing them, putting water on them, moving them around, getting them where I need them to be. squeegeeing off the water, and then putting the Solvaset on, and doing what you saw with these two. And I'll do the same with all the rest. I don't think you need to see me put all of the decals on. So this decal should be ready to go. Let me get water on it. Move it into position. It's a jacket. I got to get it to go over here. There we go. All right. So I have a natural line to line this up with. There's a jacket right here. So there's an edge. The word capacity and 100,000 pounds goes right at the top of that edge. So I can just do that. Let me get some of this water off of here. It's causing it to jump back or jump around and not stick where I want it to be. And all I'm doing right now is just moving the decal into position. And then I want it to be centered in between these lugs. So that's just going to be an eyeball thing too. Alright, so now I need to get this water off of here. And this is where rolling the... I'm going to move these decals up. This pad that I'm using keeps pushing them around, and sometimes I lose decals and I have to sacrifice another decal sheet for it. So now, rolling the Q-tip keeps the decal from moving. Alright, so I've locked down that one. Yep, now I can squeegee the water out of this bottom one. And on this one I can't really get a roll. Oh yeah, I can get a roll in there. And what I have to do is I have to get it underneath here and push it out from around where that... There we go. Now this one has the clear film right over that jacket. So this one I will cut on the model very carefully. First of all, I want to get all the water out from underneath it so that when I cut it, it won't move. And that way the film will lay down very nicely when I put the solvent. So I have one of these blades. This is a scalpel blade, surgical scalpel blade. So it's really, really sharp. It's sharp on the top to the point and on the bottom to the point. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to run it right along that jacket. There we go. And now I don't have any decal film going over that edge. But what I do need to do is I need to get a point under there and squeegee out the water. There we go. Now I can take some Solvaset and get it all on there. Okay, dry it off and squeegee up all the Solvaset. Especially get it off the paint, because it definitely will leave a watermark on the paint. All right, so I'll just let that dry. So I'm going to go ahead and get all the other decals on, and then you'll see the results when it's all done. One of the things I do take liberty in doing, even though like this tank car stock doesn't have it, I do put frame numbers on and some of the data on the frame and such. I did put, like, I do some research and look at other tank cars of the era, and like for instance I've seen like a label saying watch your steps, so I've got one of those to put in there and such. But for the most part it's what you see on here. But then again, I take liberties to put extra, like on some of the other ones I'll put insulated and things like that, so gives them a little bit more character. So I'll go ahead and get the rest of the decals on, and we'll be very close to finishing this up. Well, here we have all the decals applied. The model is now ready to have a clear coat applied to it. I'm going to let these, I just finished the decal work, so I'm going to let these decals dry, you know, let the Solvaset evaporate, or it's all evaporated by now, but just to make sure I let it sit for about an hour, let everything settle in, and then I'll put a gloss clear coat on it and let that set for about an hour. The clear coat is to protect the decals, so let that set for about an hour, and then I'll put the final satin varnish on it, and I'll put the trucks and couplers in, and it'll be all done. So here's what the end looks like. Now, luckily, I have the artwork for this, so I was able to pull all this up and find out where the center line of this was and get everything on center. So everything works. The center is actually right at the beginning of the X on the APCX. Now, I know this isn't probably a prototype, probably doesn't exist. I don't know. I like the look of the car. I really like how it turned out. I love these cars. I know there's better cars out there, like the Tangent cars. They're far better than these AHM cars. There's more detail on them. But I like these cars. I like what they turn into. I mean, we went from that to this. The car cleans up beautifully. It's a very respectable car now. And the things that really help make it look nice, I think, and give it more character are putting in these frame decals and, you know, a little bit of extra stuff. I've got the ACI plate on there and things like that. I think those kinds of things really help to bring the cars to life and stuff. So I like this car so much, I think there's going to be one, maybe even two more of the Atlas cars in my future. But I've got other things to work on, and so I will get this car with a gloss varnish and then a satin on it, and then you'll see what it looks like all complete. Well, the car's all done. Got the couplers on, trucks are in place, I got the clear coat on. Now, a note about clear coating, when you put a clear coat on, put it on wet. Of course, you know, a gloss is gloss, but I am about this far away from the model when I put the clear coats on, about a half an inch to an inch away from the model. And I don't just little light coat. I open that up and I make a smooth movement all the way across. And especially for like semi-gloss, satin, or flat, you don't want to be back here and letting that dry as it's hitting. You're going to get a real toothy looking finish to it. You want a smooth finish where you don't see the clear coat other than the sheen. So still, I'm like right here, putting on those satin, like on this one I put a satin, or if I were to put a flat on it, I'd be right here. You want it to look wet when it goes on. Just because it looks wet and shiny when it goes on, it's going to be the sheen that it says it, whether flat or satin. It's going to dry to that sheen because that's what it is. So like I said, I get up close when I do that. Now, real quick here, just a second. Sorry about that, I wasn't ready. Get that one and get this one. Okay, so for my clear coats, I use this. All Clad Aqua Gloss. This stuff is phenomenal and it dries to the touch very fast. So that means I can blow it on, and by the time I'm done with the model, just go over it once with just air and you can pick it up and move it aside. That's how quickly it dries. Now for my satin varnish, I use 1 bottle of X22 to 2 bottles, or this is X22 clear gloss, to 2 bottles of XF86 flat, clear flat. And that gives me a really good satin finish. And this stuff, the Aqua Gloss, do not shake it. Just use it as it is. And you don't need to thin it at all. You just use it right out of the bottle. And then for the satin varnish, I use this to thin it 1-to-1. So 1 part satin to 1 part of thinner. So that's how I get the finish on my model the way it is. So that takes care of building this model. I really, really like the way it turned out. I'm really happy with it. I look forward to doing a couple more of these. But I've got other ones that I want to do too. I showed you that black one that I want to do, so I'll probably do that one. But I'm not going to do that next. The next models, or the next freight cars I'm going to do, are going to be a series of box cars. So that takes care of this car. It's all done, ready for the fleet. Well, that takes care of that tank car project, and it was loads of fun. I just love doing these kind of projects. It took me a little bit longer than I expected. Of course, you don't see that on film because you just move from session to session. But I had to wait for some parts to come in. So typically now that I have all those parts in and enough to do about 10 of those tank cars, I can go through those pretty quickly. It'd be about a week per tank car. Now, if I wanted to do 2 at a time, I could probably do 2 of them in a week also. So I hope you enjoyed that little freight car project, and I really appreciate it if you made it through all of them, or this whole video. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to bringing more to you. Now, real quick, before I leave here, I am working on the F units. I'm just bringing up the second set of ABA units to the same level as the first set, which if you're watching that video, you've seen all of what I'm doing right now. So once I get those up to the same level as the first ABA set, then I can start videoing again and start putting the shell and detailing the shell and that kind of stuff. So anyway, again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.